Hello, everyone. Thanks for watching today. We're here with Michael as part of our soundings on Oyster River Pages this fall. And he is the award-nominated author of the Raphael Ward series. And he has a new standalone novel coming out called Slip, and that'll be out November 1st. So welcome, Mike. Thank you for taking the time to talk with us today.
Thank you for having me. This is great.
I have a few questions for you. The first being, what was your inspiration for this newest book, Slip?
Man, inspiration's a weird thing, right? I guess sometimes people like they know the moment, they look out the window, they see a bird chirping and hey, I have a poem. I don't tend to work that way. I tend to really dive into the swamp of writing and somewhere along the way find a path out. So I think that the best answer is I've been working on this book for a long time, for about 8 years. And initially, I think the inspiration was I just wanted to write about someone who built motorcycles and solved mysteries. I don't know, some kind of weird Hardy Boys type, Sherlock Holmesian little story that was semi-based on my own life. And somewhere along the way, it evolved into something very different. But Byron, the main character, she is definitely a version of myself. Her background, her personality, her messed up sense of humor, that's a lot of me. And that's come and gone over the years. This book's been through about 5 complete drafts that were all very different from each other. So maybe the inspiration point is actually when it went from those other drafts to this final draft. And it was just kind of a realization that I really liked basically taking Gillian Flynn and Joe Hill and smashing them together, and then taking this character I've been living with for 8 years and throwing her in and seeing what happened.
Nice.
And that's when it all really came together.
Nice. Would you say that this is similar to your Raphael Ward series or different in many ways?
It's definitely different. So the Raphael Ward books, they're dystopian thrillers. So the thriller aspect kind of carries over, but it's a little stronger in Slip. Raphael Ward those are action adventures. They're very much like Indiana Jones meets Fahrenheit 451 kind of a thing. Whereas Slip is, it's not as epic. It's not saving the world. It's just one person trying to kind of figure out her place and how to help the people she cares about. But the thing that I think is very similar about it is, and I've noticed this in moving through the 4 books of Raphael Ward, Slip with Byron, and now the next book I'm working on, I write misfits. I write people who just don't belong to a group. You see this on TV, right? The main character, they have this group of best friends, and those best friends are there for everything. Whether it's I don't know, the Big Bang Theory or whatever, that's their group, that's their family. My brother has a group of friends like that. I don't. I've had some close friends here and there, but I kind of move from group to group depending on the situation. I have the friends that I go to bars with, and I have the friends that I do a writing group with. But I'm not fully immersed in any of them. And I think all of my main characters have that. They're not 100% sure where they fit. And they definitely see that they fit partially in some places, and they might want to belong a little more, but they don't know how. And I think that's definitely a thread through all of the books. So the main character trying to find really their place and what kind of their purpose is in life, is maybe one of the similarities.
And in many ways, all writers write, right? Or that's the strength of their writing, is writing what you know. And so that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely.
I had a poetry mentor in college who always used to tell me that all good writing surprises the author way. And so I'm curious, do you find that you're surprised by your own writing? And if so, in what ways did Slip surprise you?
I am constantly surprised by my own writing, not the least of which in the fact that I'm actually able to do it. Um, so many times I sit down to write, whether it's the first draft of a chapter or just start a new book, and I don't think anything's going to happen. Or I finish a book and I don't have the next book, and I just assume I'm never going to have an idea again. So there's that in a surprise, but the characters really kind of shock me sometimes. Um, in the Raphael Award series, I had intended a romance to form in the first book. And kind of every time I wrote the scenes, the characters, I could hear the one, Mackenzie, I could hear her kind of whispering in the back of my head, if you make me touch him, I'm going to kill you in your sleep. Um, so I had to do what the characters needed. With Slip, with Byron, I think what surprised me about her was that I didn't expect her to be as vulnerable as she ended up being. I kind of envisioned her as a real badass kind of character, and she very much ended up being the reluctant hero full of a ton of doubt. And I didn't realize that until I got into that final version of the story.
Hmm.
In fact, that was one of the big things that really made it click for me and made that work as the version that's getting published.
Hmm. Interesting. How do you know, as a follow-up question, how do you know when it clicks? Like, what does that moment look like? That's
For
the right version
me,
of that character.
it usually looks like um, my kids screaming in the background, me cleaning up the mess they just made, my wife asking me to help with something, and all of a sudden I stop and go, shit, I had an idea. And I just leave it all and I run downstairs to my office and I type it out real quick. And when I come back upstairs, everybody's glaring at me. But there usually comes a moment. It often comes after I've made a few notes here and there. Um, and then I write it and it just feels more right than anything has previously.
Hmm.
And as far as I know, that's the right way to do it, unless it happens again.
Mhm.
And sometimes there's a decision to it. Sometimes it's just with Slip, I wrote the first draft in 2014, 2015. I wrote a new draft of it in between every one of the Raphael Ward novels. Um, and I just decided when I was done with the Raphael Ward series, this was going to be the final one for Slip. I couldn't keep doing that. And I spent about a year on it, and that was just going to be it. So
Mhm. Yeah,
here she is.
makes sense. Yeah. So in addition to being an author, you're also a professor. You
Yep.
teach creative writing courses and some literature courses. How does your knowledge of literature or creative
Um, you froze there, so I'm not
Oh
100%
no.
sure you finished the question.
Okay.
Just how does the teaching
Yeah, how does
kind of influence?
teaching literature and creative
Okay. Yeah, it kind of gets in the way sometimes.
Hmm.
Um, you know, I've been teaching for a little more than 15 years, and there's an aspect of my brain that just doesn't let go of that, even when I'm not teaching. I'm pretty sure it drives my wife nuts. She doesn't really complain about it, but as we're watching TV or watching a movie, and I'll start saying, that's not really planned out. There was no foreshadowing for that, and I can feel her vibe kind of go, "Shut up, professor." And sometimes that happens when I'm writing, um, but it also helps me be aware that, like, how do you work foreshadowing in? How do you layer it in? The fact that that doesn't have to happen in the first draft. Um, I think teaching literature kind of somewhat gets in the way, but teaching creative writing actually balances that out a bit, because I'm constantly talking with my students about the importance of revision and how really not important that first draft is, other than to finish it and get it all out on the page. Um, and uh, I think the best part is actually from teaching is the ideas I get from my students.
Hmm.
I'm not stealing them, but no, just their enthusiasm and the way they come up with ideas, and reading their stories and the new ideas that those pop off in my head, often completely unrelated, but just watching how a student, puts together dialogue in a scene, and all of a sudden I'm thinking, you know what, I could put together dialogue that way, a little faster, a little slower, a little more stretched out, whatever it might be. That would fit great in this scene that I wrote for Byron, and I'll go back and revise it. Um, I think being a teacher definitely helps keep me going as an author. It keeps the inspiration there to keep writing.
Hmm.
Also because I feel like if I'm not writing, then I can't keep teaching creative writing, and I kind of like my job. So
Yeah, that's great. So as you know, at Oyster River Pages, we work to feature underrepresented voices in publishing, as well as new and emerging voices. So what advice do you have for new writers or those looking to publish a novel?
yeah, it's tough. Um, like it's a different kind of difficult than it was when I first thought about being an author.
Hmm.
20 years ago, 30 years ago. At that point, it was you had to get noticed by an agent, you had to get noticed by a top 5 publisher, or you weren't going anywhere. Now you've got just endless options on how to publish, but none of them are the golden ticket. Nobody's handing out, um, big advances to new authors like they did for Stephen King, in the 1970s. Um, the way into publishing is a lot more complex. So there's that whole aspect of it that has to be dealt with. But before you can even get there, you got to write the thing, whatever it is. And this is the thing I stress most to my students. Um, it's great to dream about the success and everything, but you've got to finish the first draft. And that's really the hardest part. I mean, I've read studies and statistics, and I think the best fake statistic, and it's fake because I don't know what the actual number is, but it's got to be 95% of people who sit down and think they can write a novel, they never finish the first draft.
Hmm.
So if you get there, you're already elite. You're already in the top 10% of potential authors. And then comes the revision. And again, you're going to see 80-90% of people never finish that revision. They never get it ready for publishing, or they jump ahead and they publish it when it's not ready, which has its own consequences. So that's number one. Just you want to be an author, do that, and do the work that goes with it. The research for your work, the workshops that help improve, get with writing groups, all that stuff. But I think there's another side to it, which is be you. Don't follow trends. Don't chase trends, because that's not going to let you develop your voice. In the end, what's going to give you success and what's going to sustain your success is your unique voice. I mean, human beings are storytellers, man. We've been doing it for thousands and thousands of years. We're all artists. We're all storytellers. We all have some way of expressing that, whether it's through painting or writing or, craftsman laying tile, whatever it might be. Um, you've got to find that thread in yourself, and just let that out. Let it be yourself. And if it's like someone else, that's fine, because it's still yours. And if it's completely unique and not like anything else, and all the agents and publishers are going, we don't know what to do with this, keep going anyway.
Hmm.
Because just because they don't know what to do with it, I mean, for every publisher who says we don't know what to do with this, there's so many other readers who are dying to read that. So just
Hmm.
be you, let your voice come through, tell your story, whatever that might be. Even if
Hmm.
it's, 25-year-old female version of yourself called Byron who builds motorcycles.
That's great. Good advice. So my last question today is just, do you have any new or emerging writers that you would out?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this question for a little bit. I kind of skimmed the questions you gave me in advance. I didn't want to think about them too much. But this one caught me. And I mean, I kind of just want to shout out, like, the whole world should come into my creative writing class and see these voices. But obviously that's not feasible. Um, there's one student that I had, and I became friends with, and she's gone on to she went to an Ivy League school from Northampton Community College. She went to Columbia. She battled a lot of personal issues. Um, Her name is Brenna Webb. And she's not a poet. She's not a novelist. She's a screenwriter and a director. And man, she's good. She's really good. And she could be a poet if she wanted. She could be a short story writer if she wanted. I've read both of those genres from her, and she's great. But she's got a couple short films out. One's called Let's Do Drugs, and the other is called, can't remember, I put it up here on one of my websites here. But I don't see it. Parts, I think. Let's Do Drugs was her first one. It was featured in a couple film festivals, I think, including the Big Apple Film Festival. It was an IndieX finalist. You know, like I said, everybody's an artist in some way. Just because it's not a poem, just because it's not a novel. And check out people who do these other things. And Brenna's really good, and I really hope she starts to really see some success, because it feels great when you get something out there. I think the best advice I was ever given as an author was my mentor in grad school. And after I graduated, I brought him a copy of my first novel, and he got this big smile on his face, and he said, "This right here, they can never take this away from you. You did it." And that's it, man. And every one of those is a step. You just keep building on it, you know, whatever that is, whether it's just finishing the first draft of a short story, or you get it published and you get paid, you know, in $3. You know, that was my first payment for a short story ever, was $3. Sometimes you get paid 5 copies a night, whatever it is, the publication's there. Nobody can ever make it go away. And that's just awesome. And I'm watching Brenda do this with her films and starting to build a name. And it's amazing. And she's got like a YouTube thing out there. So if you wanted to watch Let's Do Drugs, it's 10-12 minutes long, and you just enter it and then you'll find it on YouTube. It's good. It's real good.
Awesome. And we'll link her stuff on this page as well.
Great.
So thank you for sharing that. We will also be featuring the first chapter of Slip here on our site, so you can check that out. And thank you so much for your time, Mike. I appreciate you taking the time out of your day to talk to us at Oyster River Pages. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Oyster River Pages is great. I enjoy seeing the issues come out, and you've been doing a great job with it. And thank you very much for talking to me about Slip.
Thanks.